That's what you call it.
Oh my,
Yeah,
I know,
you don't change.
neither do I.
I always thought he was a good guy until he came in with his word and stuff.
They're totally different.
Nobody likes
The house is
I-
up here.
I haven't really
the
watched
church house is down here.
baseball with the opening series, but I had a kid on the bus who's a huge Yankees fan. Say, hey, how'd that series go this week? And I'm saying, I can tell by the tone of your voice that they go well for the Red Sox.
Call the meeting to order, please stand for the pledge. Wayne, would you mind?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Wayne. I was like, well, Wayne leads the pledge. Never everybody's out here. All right, we'll move on to the agenda. I would ask that we modify the agenda slightly by putting in a new number 20, which is athletic softball athletic permit for use of the fields on Sumwell Road. To make that a 20, public comment would be 21, and adjournment would be potentially number 22.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Thank you. Move on to public comment. If you could please provide your name, address, limit your comments to 3 minutes or less until we have a chance to go around the room. Once we go around the room, if anybody else would still like to comment, we'll continue. Wayne?
Never one lack of words. Anyway, I had the pleasure of attending the community band concert at the middle school this past Saturday. Excellent concert again. And they mentioned that this was the last indoor one, and it's their first indoor one in about 2 years. But now they're going to the outdoor series. And the only reason I'm here, I'd just like to thank the board, both Mendon and Honeylight Falls, for supporting such a worthwhile and very entertaining group. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, it's Wayne Mendon, 90 Ontario Street.
Anybody else? Yeah, there were a few different things going on Saturday night, so I know I was invited to the Honeylight Falls Fire Department banquet, so I attended there. So otherwise, I'd have been at the concert. We'll move on to communications. Ian?
Wrapped up our snow and ice, I hope. Picked up all the snow fence, got our delineators off, and we're just finishing up sweeping. We have a small drainage issue on Assembly Drive. One of the cross culverts is collapsing. There's a little hole right by Battles. And that's on next year, at least I was gonna have it on next year for our road work. So we're gonna start replacing some of the under drainage this year, springtime. So that might be a little hectic through that area. We got 3 pipes we're gonna get after. The guys have been picking up roadside pickup around town, picking all the garbage up on the town roads. And we've done a couple of the county roads. They don't do it anymore, but we had some time, some money left in there, so we went ahead and did that. And brush pickup starts April 25th.
Thank you.
Andy, I have a question. When you see like furniture on the side of the road just dumped someplace, do you pick it up?
We tell them, we usually get a call, and then we tell them to call their garbage company if they can come get it and make a special trip for it. And then if it turns into a big situation, we come and smash it up. Get rid of it.
Yeah, there was one on Route 64, like during the winter.
Near Lane
Looked like-
Road.
No, this
Or
was,
that way up that end.
no, it was on 64, just, I think it was just south of Cheese Factory.
Usually you're tell them, you know, if you can cut it up.
It looked like there was nothing, nobody, but nobody lives in it. It's all farmland.
I think that somebody dumped it off.
Yeah.
I think so
that's
too.
what happened.
I think that's what happened too, but it's gone now.
Yeah, thankfully.
So I just thought, oh, maybe,
After a while, it becomes a problem. Usually we try to catch. Otherwise we have a real big dumpster.
no kidding.
Mhm.
Okay,
Michelle?
Slowing down on taxes, there's not much going on there, but still trickling in, waiting on the last of the April payments are coming in. What do we got? A lot of COVID tests left, so if anybody needs any, come in and get those. And I've reached out to a couple of companies and Chase regarding getting some credit card terminals in the office, so I'm starting to kind of get some ideas on that. Other than that, I'm pretty slow.
Thank you. Sheldon?
I have nothing.
Brett?
Attended the Mendon Community Business Association meeting earlier this month, back in March. Caught up with David Gascon afterwards, the owner, operator of Twin Peaks Winery. He had been putting forward some grant applications unsuccessfully. He was wondering if there's anything the town can assist with, and I said, we can, I think a letter of support consistent with the comprehensive plan. Maybe we can try to coordinate with our county legislature or state assembly person to also support. But he seemed appreciative of that. We have another meeting coming up next Tuesday for that. I plan on attending that also. Also working on reaching out to some of the other Hamlet businesses. I know they're not all in that association. See if there's anything we can do.
How do they get into the association?
You give them a small nominal fee and
Okay.
you're in the association. And I think some of the businesses just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's kind of derived from a couple of different organizations that are now defunct. So there's one fee for businesses in the 14506, and then there's another fee for everybody outside that. So it's, the main purpose of it is to promote the businesses in the hamlet, but they don't, they don't require that your business be in hamlet, but it's to the benefit of the Mendon businesses, that type of thing. So I've been attending for several years. Brett has started to attend, and it's a nice group. Obviously during COVID they didn't meet, so they're kind of getting reorganized from a standpoint of people who attend on a regular basis.
They have a lot of good ideas they kick around, and it's important to kick them around, I think. Building department's busy. They got a couple of vacations between Corey and Katrina this month, so I haven't really caught up too much with them on updates. I sat in with a meeting with Labella and Al Reeves about the spray park. I'll defer report on later discussion. We have that. ZBA, there's been no meeting since our last town board meeting. Have a meeting with John later this week on Thursday. Refer to that discussion for a later agenda item also. And then I sat down and I did the audits on here. One thing of note, as we go through the audit is, I notice sometimes as we get into our consultants, one thing to remember is sometimes phone calls and emails and whatnot turns into billable hours. One thing to keep track of, as we've been going through, we're a little bit busier than we usually are with the spray park bid, but with researching the no bid for contract 2, I think sped up this bill a little bit more. We have some conversations in here between our consultants, which are adding up, but it is what it is. One thing to remember. I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Karen?
Nothing to report.
Okay, Cindy?
With regard to the library, they are doing a policies review. All their policies are being looked at and reviewed and revised as necessary. One of their biggest things is that they said they've had quite a few requests for meetings, and there really is no meeting room in the library, so they're looking into how they can section an area off for larger meetings. They're working on their budget, and they are considering removing overdue fines. Many of the libraries in the state apparently have gone fineless, and they're finding they're getting a lot more books back that way. So that's what they're looking into. Well, she said a lot of people don't bring them back because they find them under their kids' beds and they realize, oh, these are 2 years overdue. Take them back. So, and there is a website you can go to at ed.library finds, I believe it's called, and it shows all the different libraries in the state who have gotten rid of overdue fees. And Pittsford is the latest to go feeless. So she said and Henrietta is now feeless, and I think she said Penfield is also. So that's it.
How big meetings are they hosting?
She didn't give a number, but she said that the rooms that they have only fit about 4 people
Okay.
at most. John, you and I were in one of those rooms when we met with a couple of board members a few years back. We really can't get more than 4 in there comfortably, maybe 5.
Yeah, you want them to be your close relatives, I think, if you're going into one of those rooms.
I went in with you. So.
So would they look at repurposing some of their existing space?
That's what
Putting up some partition walls?
yes. That's something that they talked about, but they were going to work on it this month. So that they could come up with. They kind of put together a quick ad hoc committee, and so that's what they're looking at.
Cindy, did they mention if they're gonna, like, in their budget, we have down for $9,300 worth of revenue. Did they mention how much of that 9,300 they would be a shortfall if they did away with the book fees? I mean, is it, 9,000 or whether it's $9? They didn't mention that.
They did not mention that, specifically, they said how, we've got to look at before we decide to do this.
I would just caution them that, you can't spend money you don't
And
receive.
that was part of the
So if
conversation.
the revenue doesn't come in, that means they're, that's 9,000 that if, for instance, I'm not saying this is the case, but if those were all overdue book fees, that's $9,000 in their budget that they're not gonna be able to spend because you can't spend what you don't bring in, so to speak. So,
And Allison did bring that up.
so
So
I have no idea what the
and-
number is,
and
but as long as
there
they
was-
take it into consideration, I don't have a problem.
Right.
Great. Tom?
Yeah, we had a nice big planning board meeting last week, and we're kind of four things up front of the board. Amendment Green, which we kind of kicked back to the planning board last week, or I'm sorry, last month with our approval. There has been some changes based on DOT recommendations as far as the entrance to the what would be the new entrance to the 30 home area. And there was discussion about about having a drainage district, yeah, there. So anyways, the conversations continue on. It wasn't a hearing, so there wasn't feedback, although we did get some feedback with a couple of neighbors in public comment. There's a property on the corner of Harloff and Cheese Factory that they want to divide the 2 property. That was a hearing. There was some neighbors with concerns that they were gonna put a subdivision in one of the 2 parcels once it was divided up. One of the neighbors brought up deed restrictions or whatever, and Don was very good at explaining, deed restriction is a agreement between 2 parties, but it doesn't really involve the municipality or the town. So anyway, so I'm not sure where that's gonna be heading. Hillary, once again, is doing the summer concert series. There's gonna be 2 this year. I apologize, I don't know the first date. The second date I know is August 13th. What we gave her is preliminary approval with conditions. She needs something to go to the state with to get her liquor license. So we've given her that, and there's just a couple other things. But, the nice thing this year is we have a blueprint of what's going to look like. Last year, we didn't have that. So, and everyone seemed to think everything went well. There were some neighbors there. The gentleman from the Commons across the street that and Hillary's is all about involving other businesses in the community. So she's reaching out and doing that. And this gentleman was happy to hear that. Someone also called with concerns about food trucks coming in from out of town. Since someone reached out and said that there actually are a couple of food trucks that are based in town. So again, Hillary's got a very, is very well defined in her mind that this is for the businesses amended. So, and the nice thing that I heard about that is proceeds are from the concert, from both concerts, I believe, will be going towards the memorial, which is nice.
Nice.
There was one other, there's a property in Mendon Ponds, and again, it's kind of like add-on, it's a house that's right next door, but they want to divide it into two parcels, and there was a hearing regarding that, not much feedback, so that's it.
If there's a drainage district in Mendon Green, that comes back to the town board, correct?
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and again, Mike was there, and that would require work on his part to determine, does the pond need to be dredged every 10 years? Does it need to be checked every year? So there's, we need to have some engineering behind what would be the cost of this drainage district, so. That's interesting, as John brought up, and because we were in the meeting, are there any other drainage districts in town? And John was saying the whole town has a drainage district. So that was news to me.
Yeah, so the developer needs to ask the town board to include that parcel in a townwide drainage district or whatever the case may be. So
Okay.
at this point, we haven't received any
Yeah.
correspondence along those lines. And the other thing was that one on Harloff, that I think the individual who was referring to some kind of a deed restriction. There's actually a conservation easement on that property.
Oh, okay.
So I think they were either didn't understand the difference.
Confusing the two concepts, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
so the town has a conservation easement on that property, so that's something the planning board will take into consideration. But there's nothing to do with subdividing the property, because there's not an application to build anything on
Yeah,
it. There's
exactly,
an
that's
application to subdivide it, not build on it. When there's an application to build on it, that's when the conservation easement will kick in.
And I think that was a misunderstanding
Yes.
from the neighbors, so.
Thank you. A couple of things. I also attended the MCBA meeting with Brent. There was talk about a TV commercial, and they were looking for funding from the town. And I told them that, we can't pick winners and losers in the business district. We can't pay for a commercial that's gonna spotlight 3 or 4 businesses. That's not fair to all the businesses. So it's either have to spotlight the hamlet of Mendon with no particular business in mind. And also, by the way, there's no money in the budget to do it. So we had a nice discussion about that. Also attended a Eagle Scout reception here for Ben Hool. Ben did the depository for the retired American flags outside this building. It was very nice. We are looking at phone replacement and copier replacement at town hall. So we've been in touch with a few vendors along those lines. Let's see here. I had a chance to meet with our Caleb from our highway department. He's going to be our new buildings and grounds guy. So I had a chance to meet with him and talk to him about, this time of year is when buildings and grounds really takes off. Received the annual report from the Mendon Public Library. We had a case of check fraud that a check was intercepted in, I imagine, the mail, although I don't really know for sure. So we've been in touch with our insurance company, the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, and I'm awaiting a phone call from the deputy regarding the status of that case. Christina Roming resigned from the Library Board of Trustees. Christina was great, not only serving on the Library Board of Trustees, but as president. She served during COVID. She also served during the search for a new director when the former director retired. So I really appreciate all the work she did. She was really a great person to work with, and we'll miss her. The town historian Diane Ham contacted me about a marker for Lafayette. Apparently he came through the town of Mendon, and we discussed some places I suggested somewhere on the linear trail in the hamlet. where people would actually stop and read it, because if you've ever been by one of those markers in a car, you're lucky to see the headline, so to speak, on the marker. So she's working with somebody from the state. Also, as I mentioned, attended the Honey Falls Fire Department banquet on Saturday night. And as I mentioned before, every time there's something out that says they're redrawing the lines for the state senate or the state assembly, somebody sues somebody and it's up in court, judge overturns it. So I've kind of lost track as to where that is right now, because quite frankly, I got better things to do than follow that on a weekly basis, and who sues who and who takes it to appeals court, and who overturns what. Eventually, we'll find out who our state representatives are gonna be. But for the short term, follow the bouncing ball, I guess I'll call it. We'll move on to supervisor's monthly report.
To make a motion to acknowledge receipt of the supervisor's monthly report for March 2022.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next, we'll move on to town clerk's monthly report.
Make a motion to acknowledge receipt of the town clerk's monthly report, March 2022, showing receipts and disbursements in the amount of $3,844.19.
I'll say that. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Move on to minutes. We have minutes here for March 14th and March 28th. We can do them together or separate.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular town board meetings as presented for March 14th and March 28th.
Just for clarification, the March 28th was a special meeting.
Okay.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next, we'll move on to budget transfers and adjustments, which we have none. I left it on there just because sometimes something comes in the last minute, or, so we can pass on that. On to vouchers.
I'll make a motion to approve all claims on vouchers number 22-220 to 22-290 on general abstract 22-04 in the amount of $227,546.07.
Second.
Any discussion? Big ticket item was the Village of Honey Falls for 100, saw it here earlier.
31,000.
Did I miss it? Anyway, 100 some odd thousand, there it is. $131,701, which is the ambulance contract. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
And also make note that library vouchers numbered 22-037 to 22-052 on library abstract 22-04 in the amount of $4,601.96 were also presented as a part of that for payment.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to number 11, which is a contract with ESP Consulting. Emily Columbus is here from ESP Consulting, and I think you probably would like to speak for a couple of minutes, or
Sure, yeah, I'd be
that'd
happy
be
to.
great.
Again, Emily Columbus, like Columbus with a P. And a little bit about me. I've been in government for 20 years. I started in the Monroe County Legislature as an intern. Worked in New York State, worked in federal government on and off for 10 years in Washington, D.C. for former Congressman Tom Reynolds. And also came back to the state, worked at the assembly level and worked in the Finger Lakes. And then I started the grant department at MRB Group, which is an architecture firm, engineering and architecture firm. And with them, started their department and worked with a number of different organizations in Ontario, Livingston, Monroe, a lot of mainly municipalities. That's their main client. So have written a number of grants for municipalities and really found I enjoyed it. Never intended to be a grant writer. You could probably tell my personality, sitting down and writing is not my absolute favorite thing to do. But I have an extreme talent for it because I've experienced all the levels of government. I've written over 25 different grants at a very high success rate and decided to go out on my own. So about 6 months ago, I went out on my own to become a grant writer and have worked with nonprofits, private organizations, and municipalities. I am under a non-compete with MRB Group, but we left on very good terms. And I said, Town of Mendon is looking at some potential, kind of like an overview of what might be available and what might be good for them. And they said, go right ahead. And so that is the relationship I have. That non-compete actually ends at the end of September, but certainly want to make that clear. So what I have proposed, and I had a conversation with the supervisor about kind of where the town is with grants, and the grant world is in a place that it's never been before. I don't know if you see the money falling out of the sky or not. It's a matter of having a basket and catching it. This is not how it will be. This is not how it was for the past 5 years. It is not how it will be in 5 years. So having kind of the ear to the ground right now on what's going on with grants is incredible because, it literally changes daily. It literally changed today, particularly with small business grants. So what I proposed was kind of looking, sitting down, obviously with the board and with, looking through documents, which would be your comprehensive plan, recent board minutes, to identify what your priorities are, because you don't want to go after every grant. There are a lot of grants out there. And there are different cycles of grants. There are grants that go on that are open and you can just apply year round. And then there's also what's called the CFA, the Consolidated Funding Application Process, which is a 300-page document that comes out on May 1st. It's governor's genius idea 10 years ago, ex-governor. It is 30 different grants through 11 different state agencies, and you apply all at one time. The guidance comes out May 1st. It's all due July 30th. And it's a way for them to kind of disperse the money because one project might be eligible under multiple categories. It does not make it easier for the municipality. It actually makes it much more difficult because you're under a very difficult timeline and you're all competing at the same time. And there are very few grant writers. I'm not going to lie. There are very few in this area. So what I would also recommend is I think your timing is really good because this is going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And instead of being like, oh my God, I don't even know, what's going on, you can really take a look and say, this is going to be very similar to last year. We're not eligible. This isn't what we're looking for. There's a lot of ARPA money on American Rescue Recovery Act, American Rescue Plan Act and that came down from the federal government, pushed to the state governments. And now it's up to the states to push it out. And instead of the state creating a new office and new project opportunities, now it is doing that too. But what they're really doing is pushing the money through the state agencies and infrastructure that already exists and expanding the budget. And so there's going to be more money available for everything this year, which means your level of competitiveness is actually, you're more competitive. It's good because there's more money out there. So it's just a very interesting year. These are the dynamics of grant writing. And so that's what I would recommend. And I know that we even talked about meeting, I think later this week, because this is the time to be talking about it, looking at what you might want to apply for and being ready. That also includes registrations. New York State is all about the registrations and all about their portals. They're very big on trying to get things electronically now. So having your registrations is extremely important. And registrations are changing. And Michelle, you may or may not know, sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot, but a municipality might have a SAM registration, state municipal number. They also have a DUNS number. The DUNS number is now gone. Doesn't exist, will not work, ended last Friday. And just said to municipalities, if you have a SAM number, now use your SAM number. If you don't have a SAM number, you better get one. SAM numbers are re-upped annually. And what they're going to do is then call it a whole new name, the Universal Identification Code, which just makes it's, not the straightest arrow process I would have gone through. But these are the kind of registrations you want to have for grant writing. Also, because when you do your application, you have to put those numbers in, they have to be accurate. So making sure that those numbers are accurate for the town as well. Grants Gateway registration, SAM registration. So that's what I do as a grant writer, is really prep a community. I've worked in over 50 municipalities in the Finger Lakes area, everything from Junius, Waterloo, Seneca Falls, Town of Canandaigua, City of Canandaigua, Farmington. So I've worked with bigger organizations, smaller organizations. There are grants, even though you have good property taxes coming in. A lot of people be like, oh, that's just for people who have poverty. There are grants that are just for people for poverty. And that's the ones you don't go after. You go after the other ones that you're eligible for. And we were just talking a little bit, when it comes to grants, you want to look first at your eligibility. Are we even eligible? Sounds great. Sounds like a great idea. Free water, free sewer, sounds great. But for the Water Quality Improvement Project Act, you can't do that unless you qualify. However, there's the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, which comes out in August, which doesn't have any type of MHI, median household income regulations. So anyone who puts grants all in one category doesn't know what they're talking about, because grants are all over the place. They change all the time. And so it's good to have an advisor on those types of grants. So I would be happy to take any questions that you guys might have. Grants is a long-term investment. You want to be looking at this, you want to have your priorities. Similar to a comp plan, I mean, it costs nearly as much as a comp plan, but having a comp plan is necessary to get a grant. So having a comp plan is also necessary. And there are ways to update your comp plan to meet grant requirements that doesn't require a $50,000 investment or a $200,000 investment. It could just be a resolution. So there's lots of ways to work with government, and it helps to be working with someone who's been in it for a very long time. So.
Should we make a motion before we have questions?
Sorry.
Well, I think this is part of her presentation, so I would go ahead and
Make
make
sure.
questions at this point. I think you're right, Chuck. That's all right, John. We're not breaking any rules.
Not yet. So the CFAs are coming out on the 1st of May.
I mean, they're not going to tell us when they're coming out. I mean, if something happens politically that was terrible, it could come out earlier.
Do they have any hints of what areas they're focusing on this year? For
It'll be the
CFAs?
same. It'll be the same. I mean, there's the main list of that are every year. It's, Empire State Development, Housing Community Renewal, Office of Parks and Recreation, Department of State, Canal Corporation, which they've got lots of money, Energy Research and Development, Department of DEC, and Environmental Facilities Corporation. So it's all the grants that come out every year. And you may not be familiar with them, and that's okay. The average person is not. But so they're not rolling out necessarily. I have to reread this every time it comes out because they do make changes. And then what they do is that's the first thing they check, because if you suddenly got 500 applications on your desk, you want to find which one doesn't work, and you don't have to read it. And then you read those ones. So understanding what changes, which is why you read every inch of this for changes year to year. There'll be slight changes. I think what you're going to see coming down based on the budget that's been passed. Well, things like electric vehicles. That was actually, there was a lot of funding for that, charging stations, zero emission vehicles, the past few years. But the funding ran out, because that's the first come, first serve, and then the money runs out. And I've seen the state somewhat be hesitant towards redoing it, because there's going to be federal money coming down, and they don't want to reinvent the wheel and put the money somewhere else. However, that funding has started going to some more. I'll be looking into it for some larger private companies, because the automobile, the car sellers, they're going to have to be having all these charging stations, and these charging stations, the level of charging stations has changed. There used to be level 2, now we're moving into level 3, and that takes a lot of power. So you want to be thinking about when you say, oh, we'll just put a charging station over here, the state paid for it. Well, now you might need 10 because everyone's doing it, but where are you getting that power and who's paying for that power? And are we in partnership with the area utilities? So that's one example, but otherwise, we have to remember that every objective from last year that rolled out was Governor Cuomo's. And we now have a new governor who is up for election this fall. So that changes a lot. Grants are political. I've been in politics for 20, government is politics. You've got to be very aware of that, knowing who's supporting what, and it can change. And Empire State Development is, can have a lot of fluidity when it comes to political highlights or political endeavors that want to be processed much faster than a grant program.
Do they still expect a quick turnaround, like they announce it early May and then mid-June or due? I mean, if we have to do seeker, for a lot of them, do we have to do seeker before we complete it?
Depends. If it's planning, it's usually just it's an easier seeker. What I always recommend and always did for all of my applications is initiate seeker. That's the wording. Is the initiation of the seeker. So then what I would answer that question is seeker has been initiated, whether it's been sent to the planning board, whether it's to the town board, whether it's under review at DEC. You describe it and absolutely be honest, but it doesn't necessarily have to be completed. For Water Infrastructure Improvement Act grants, which are not part of the CFA, seeker does have to be fully completed. So that's a different, I love that you're nodding your head. You know this? Are you a parameter?
No.
So excited. You want to work together? So there's different, there's different regulations for different, for different grants. But definitely something you want to be thinking about, and something that's an eligibility question that you want to look at right away. So if it's a shovel-ready project and you don't have design drawings, engineers are great, but they're backed up. Let's be honest. If you're telling them today, I need some drawings by next month, it's not happening. So you plan and put that in your plan for next month, next
Like
year.
if they answer the phone.
Oh, stop it.
I am an engineer.
Okay. I was married to one and worked for one. I left one, divorced the other, so I mean, there's just too much. But-
So I think the most frustrating part that we've had during my time here is that we were small, so we don't have anybody who has the skill level, and to go out and quite frankly hire somebody every time we get wind of a grant that we really don't understand all the parameters of it's expensive, because now we're spending money on something that we don't get. And be honest with you, when I filled out a couple of what I would call relatively simple grant requests, we haven't received them. And so from my standpoint, maybe it's because of my abilities, but from my standpoint, I'm like, why am I wasting my time? And I think somebody like you would probably say, don't even bother, because in certain situations, and probably if we were to apply based on your knowledge, we'd have a lot better shot if we had somebody like you doing it versus somebody like me who's a novice. So that's why I wanted you to come. I wanted you to talk to the board, and I would strongly suggest that we hire Emily and ESP Consulting to go over some things. I'm not a big fan of saying, oh, there's a grant for this, so let's go do this. I'm more a person who says, we're going to do this. Let's see if we can find a grant that matches up with it. That's just me.
See if there's a grant, that's what you're doing.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that would be excellent to have the discussions of oh, you're interested in doing project A, you're probably not gonna be ready this year, but this is what you need to do in case they announce it for next year. And I think that's where our biggest benefit would come from right
Agreed.
now.
Yeah, and then my highest but unable to capture the tangible benefit, try to tell an engineer that at billable hours, but is that I told them no. And they're like, what? No, but that's the biggest value you provide is reading it and being like, you know what, this isn't worth it. It's gonna be staff time, you're gonna have to pay me, and you're not going to win. You know, nobody wants to lose. I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
I don't apply for grants that I don't think I'll win. So, so it can be very helpful.
And we have projects that have been on the revolving,
State loan fund,
no, the water, what do they call
state
it?
revolving loan fund, SRF, I have
Yeah, we have projects. that have
state
been on
revolving
there.
loan fund.
For over 20 years.
So
Because
they
we have
updated
four.
their process 2 years ago, and so you now need to put in, and are you aware of this too? The LI forms? So for every project that's on the state revolving fund, there used to be two lists, the multi-year list and the annual list. And now they've updated, about 2 years ago, they updated it where everyone needs to put in a new form it's called the LL form, I think. And you actually, because there were projects on there that were just aging, and they were like having this list of all these projects. So you literally now have to say every year, yep, we're still thinking about it. We don't have drawings, but we're still thinking about it. Because there were so many projects like that. So it's good to know that. And then also it's good to know, so that for that one, you get scored on the Water Quality Improvement Project grant, which is through the CFA. That one, sometimes your score there, there's lines, sections will affect that. So you want to know where you are. You may not be able to raise your standing on that line. The higher you are, the better. The worse shape, we punish those that do. We punish those with bad behavior, or we award bad behavior sometimes with state grants, let's be honest. But you know not to apply for the grant that's going to count that. If that's 20 points and you're not going to get any points from your listing, you don't apply for that one. Move over to the WIA. Move over to a different grant that has different eligibility criteria. Or talk to the agency and understand what gets a higher ranking, what gets you higher. And sometimes that is violations, see some, different bad things from DEC, which is sometimes good and bad. And what I'll say too is sometimes someone will be like, oh my God, look at this federal grant. It's going to be great. And I'm like, if you apply for a federal grant, you will have an audit. Is this worth it? This is a $10,000 grant, but what else are they going to find? Is that going to cost you $500,000? You just want to know what you're getting into. Grants are not easy. You are working with the government. The government is not necessarily efficient. They got a lot going on. So understanding what you're getting into can be extremely helpful.
You guys all done with the questions? Any more questions?
Oh, my head is full.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry,
all right.
sorry.
All right, then I will, in that case, I'll make a motion to enter agreement with ESP Consulting LLC for the town grant eligibility assessment, not to exceed $2,500 from account number B 8023.400 planning projects contracted services.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
That's
thank
not
you.
the test.
I know.
I have to study.
If there is, give it to this guy.
Okay.
As I said, you're welcome to stay, but don't feel obligated. Just, you probably got better things to do than stay here.
Now I
So,
gotta learn you guys.
next is the number 12, which is the Military Memorial and Spray Park budget. So, one of the things that things have changed over the last 72 hours to a certain degree. But by the same token, I wanted to keep this on the budget, talk about it, answer any questions, because I did propose a budget several months ago when we first started to talk about this. And I did want the board to see what our possible funding sources are. And absolutely, if it's not, if by any chance it was some grant fell out of the sky, that would be great. But I also don't want to plan on that. And under expenses, the board's going to address some of this expenses for the various contracts in the next motion. But I'm going to give Jason from LaBelle Associates a chance to explain some of that in the next motion. But I did want the board to see that we do have the funding. It obviously has turned out to be substantially more than we originally thought several months ago. But then again, what hasn't been substantially more than it was several months ago. If there's any, so I would draw your attention, especially to the funding sources. The expenses there's probably some changes that are going to occur there once we get to the next item on the agenda. But
One thing I want to talk more about the expenses. I think we have in here this fee for LaBella. I might be mistaken. Is that the design total or is that the total through the end of construction?
under expenses,
Yeah,
that is the contract for the soft costs that we have. That's
so the total through the end of construction. Okay.
right. That's the current contract that we have, which includes, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but does that contract includes the project oversight
Yes.
of a certain number of hours per week?
Yep.
That kind of thing. Was there another cost that you thought we'd experience, Brent?
No,
Soft costs.
I wanted to, I remember seeing from the audit, we were at 100%, but that was for design. And I just wanted to make sure that the soft cost in here was not off of that audit, that we still did have this left over for construction administration and observation.
Anybody, anything else? I think at this point, because I think when I did this Friday and then later on, when there was a conference call, things have changed quite a bit. So I would ask the board just to take this, we don't pass an exact resolution about this because I think there's substantial changes, and then we just discuss it tonight.
I'll agree. I think that's a good idea.
Anything else anybody wants to discuss on that? Okay, let's just move on to bid acceptance for the Military Memorial Spring Park. And Jason, I think maybe the best thing to do would be to have you present first, and then we'll move on to the resolution.
Yeah, well, thanks Emily for being such a tough act to follow here, so. I won't quite have your charisma, but I'll do my best. So back in March, we opened bids for the Mendon Spray Park project. For the project, there were 4 different bids or contracts that we opened for. The first, the general construction contract. The second was the HVAC plumbing contract. The third, it was the electrical contract, and the fourth was the military memorial. At the time, we did not receive any bids at all for the second contract, which was the plumbing, the HVAC portion of it. So after discussing the best path forward at that point, the town hired Al Reeve, who was a attorney consultant, and was very helpful through the process. We tried to determine the best possible way to award the second contract, and it became clear after time that the only way to fully award that contract would be to rebid that portion of it. Ultimately, we arrived, and I sent you in the town a letter on Friday stating that we think that the town should reject bids 1 and 3 and award contract 4. Contract 4 is a military memorial, which would almost be sort of a standalone contract. It's not really entirely dependent upon the other contracts. And then to rebid projects or contracts 1, 2, and 3 as a single sole source or sole general prime contract. initially, when we rebid the project out, we were under the impression that the projects would fall under Wick's Law. So I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Wick's Law, but it basically requires the mechanical and electrical and general all be separated. After consulting with Al Reeve, he said, let us know that due to the specific nature of this project, and that this actually would be considered a bathhouse, essentially. Is that sound about right, John?
Yes.
A bathhouse, so it would not apply, Wick's Law would not apply to it. So we could rebid the project as a single prime contract, which would allow one contractor to have sole responsibility for the electrical, HVAC, and the mechanical portion of the work. So just with the difficulties involved with awarding the second contract, we made the recommendation to the board to just scrap all bids and just rebid the project. In terms of Labella's timeline, we probably could have the project back out to bid next week. 3 weeks of bidding, a week or two of bid review, and we would look to make them an award either at special hearing or at a regular town board meeting. So, you guys have any questions or?
I think that makes a lot, I personally think it makes a lot of sense to go with that because we need to get this right. It needs to be done properly and nobody did on that one. Let's put it up for a rebid, and group them together.
I think awarding contract for work makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Because we know that we get a lot of people that put a lot of effort into fundraising. We want to keep that going. And there's also, we're talking about granite. We need to order that granite,
Yeah.
get it coming, get it engraved.
Right.
And it's very important to the community, I think, for that memorial to keep in motion.
Agreed.
Now, I think that I realize that we're running the risk that cost might go up. It is the nature of the environment right now. But at the same time, Cindy, you're
We
absolutely
can't go
right.
the other way.
It has to be right. We don't do a lot of big projects in this town. And we can't hope it turns out okay.
No.
It has to be good.
Yep. I agree.
So I agree with everything everyone said and that, be prepared that, as we all see there, I haven't really witnessed a whole lot of prices going down. But I also know that this is something that's gonna be around for a long time and we want it done correctly. And I think this hopefully will end up being a good conclusion. The good news is that, following up with what Emily said, is that we do have some of that ARPA money available. So we, as you can see in the budget that I proposed, we do have that as one of the items there. So we are, we've already received about, I think it's $50,000, and then we're supposed to receive another $340,000 or $50,000 this
August.
June, July, August, this August. So our total amount is somewhere in this, I forgot the exact number, but it was somewhere in the $700,000 range. And of course, as I reported earlier, that they've changed all the qualifications for what projects. So basically, it's if you receive under $10 million, all it has to be is for the good of the public good, I think is how they said it.
Yeah, originally there were 4 categories and then nobody was spending the money. They made the rules too hard. And
Yeah. And and the awards were all based on population, so you can imagine what Greece and Arundecoy and Webster got. So I think they were quite frankly having a hard time figuring out how to spend all the money. So we could send some here.
Yeah.
But
Take
anyway,
donations.
yeah. Anyway, does anybody else have any questions of Jason while he's here?
I think, Jason, realistically, if we advertised next week, 3 weeks, then 2 weeks, so we're talking 6 weeks from today. So if my math is right, that's the end of June.
Right.
So we're realistically talking about maybe starting to prep the site this fall. Once we get all the contracts in place and contractors,
Right, yeah, I'll have to go back through and take a look at the calendar and come up with a better timeline. The biggest thing is making sure that we can hold that price for contract number 4. Getting them under contract and with an extended timeline. If we award them the work, they can go forth and, purchase all their materials and get it stockpiled and ready. And then, once we release them to go, they can do the installation.
I'm gonna imagine that granite's gonna take some time.
Yeah.
To get it here, let alone.
Sure.
Yeah,
And grade it and polish it.
I mean, would you say it's a probability that we could finish that project before the end of construction season in 2022?
before the end of, yeah, I think that's a possibility to get it done this year. Yep.
I mean, that at this point, I think would be a goal that I would certainly want to try for.
Right,
That way, basically, you just turn on the water in the spring.
right.
I know I'm exaggerating, but yeah,
Mhm.
this time next year, we could be.
Right, we'd probably be looking at maybe substantial completion this year, final completion and restoration next year, once, it gets warm again, you can get all your plantings in, grass established and everything.
Once
only
we
thing
get the building up, there is a lot of valve work that can be done inside.
Right,
Right.
right.
Throughout the winter.
I mean, I think there's, the time of year probably isn't the greatest to rebid this thing, but by the same token, you gotta get it done.
And I think we gotta keep it in motion.
I think we do too. I don't think, I know we do.
We've seen a lot of contractors pretty competitive with bids lately. There's a number of projects that are in the exact same situation as this, as projects are going out to bid. Costs are coming back higher than what the funding is available for. So contractors are sort of in this limbo, I guess would be the best word. And they can't, because, they're the low bidder, but there's not funding available. They're waiting on the grants, everything's to get modified, as you probably know, in order to get the funding allocated. So there's a lot of contractors that are just bidding on work just to get things going. So.
Anything else, Jason? Okay. At this point, is there, I would suggest that we, in number 13, we only award the contract number 4, $120,000 with CP Ward.
I'll make that motion to approve just contract number 4 with CP Ward for the military memorial.
On second, then.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next, number 14, this is a public hearing for an unsafe building at 3316 Rushman Road. I'm going to open the public hearing regarding the person or persons owning the property to give them an opportunity to be heard as to why the building has not been removed. For the town board to receive proposals for removal of such building pursuant to the Mendon Town Code. So I will open the meeting, or public hearing rather, at 7:57 p.m. And is there anyone who would like to comment during the public hearing portion of tonight? Is there a motion to close this evening's public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 15 is number 3316 Rushman Road, an unsafe building. Yes. Oh, thank you. It is. So in number 15 on the second page, second line down, it says trailers, that should say building. I cut paste mistake. Is there a motion to proceed with that
And
resolution?
did you wanna read the whole motion or?
If you want to, sure. It's not that bad.
It's the resolution is whereas pursuant to section 117-4 of the town code, Jack Moss has been notified unsafe structure located as property 3616 Rushmont Road, and whereas public hearing was held on April 11, 2022. Now therefore be resolved, Mr. Moss shall have until June 11, 2022 to remove any personal property or belongings from the building. And be it further resolved that the supervisor is authorized to contract for the removal of the trailers.
Should
say
buildings.
Oh, pardon me.
Sorry.
For the removal of the building on or after June 11, 2022 at a cost
Should be to be determined.
to be determined. And finally, be it resolved that all expenses to the town in removing the buildings from the property be assessed on the real property from which the buildings were removed, and the expense also assessed shall constitute a lien and charge on the real property on which it is levied until paid or otherwise satisfied or discharged, as authorized by town code 117-8 and 117-11.
Second.
Any discussion? Is everybody familiar with what building we're talking about?
Tennis courts?
Across the street, yeah.
It looks like it's gonna fall over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been looking like that for a while.
Yeah, so,
Demolition's gonna be like this.
so, you know, Corey first wrote him about just about a year ago. And, you know, COVID then, you know, thought maybe we were heading a good direction. And then, as we all know, everything kind of went backwards. And so he wrote him again this March. You know, I don't think we've received any correspondence. He didn't pick up his registered letter at the post office, but we also sent one just via first class mail. You know, this has gone, in my opinion, it's gone on long enough. We had problems with him with trailers a few years ago. And, you know, when push came to shove, he finally got him out of there. And I think that's what we want to have happen. This gives him 60 days to remove anything he wants to remove. We'll get some pricing on knocking it down and tearing it and taking it away. I don't know, quite frankly, what, if anything, is still in that building.
And then I would recommend that a copy of the resolution be sent to him by regular mail and certified mail.
Okay, thank you.
I agree. I think it's time. I think I understand the restraints of COVID that has happened, but not to be a wise or anything, but gravity and Mother Nature does not respect the restraints of COVID.
Right.
It's coming down sooner or later if we don't take care of it. Hopefully nobody gets hurt.
Honestly, it's kind of embarrassing. I mean, drive by.
Well, there are a few places around.
Yeah, this is embarrassing and dangerous. I think.
Yes,
And that's what I think
absolutely.
every time I drive by. It's like, geez.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
I-
Any opposed? Thank you. Move on to number 16, which is youth center discussion. How do you want to lead the charge here?
Yeah, John and I got together a couple weeks ago and discussed the possibility of, you know, how we need to reopen. We talked about possibly doing maybe the last month and a half of school. But as it's turned out, the personnel issues there are it's a steep hill to climb. So, you know, kind of what we thought we'd bring in front of the board is the possibility of opening beginning of next year. So the beginning of the school year, fresh start, boom. I do think communication needs to go out to the public about, you know, where we are. I mean, when we decide what's going to happen, what we're going to do. I had mentioned the possibility, it'd be nice to have, we had an open house there at the beginning of, right before we opened. I wouldn't mind, you know, the possibility of maybe an open house or 2 or 3 during the summer. We got to get people attached to it. I mean, it'll be, the nice thing about opening up opening up in September is that the weather's going to be nice. Walking will be fine. We can get into a contract possibly with the school district. We'll have a new transportation director at that point, as far as getting students over there if we find that's something we need. So That's kind of where John and I are at, but we look for your input, what you think.
So right now, personnel is the big holdback.
Yeah, there's a,
Well, I also, I mean, this is just my personal opinion. I also think it's a bad idea when something opens and closes and opens and closes
Agreed.
and opens and closes. It sends the message to people, well, is that really open or isn't it? Or-
yeah,
And that kind of thing. My personal preference is to wait till school starts, maybe not do anything, you know, the day after Labor Day, but do something mid-September to jumpstart this project and to get it going again. I think I think it's really as you know, people will be excited. Anything that's been closed due to COVID that you open, I think people get excited.
Yeah.
And I think they'll still be excited in September. You know, because as I've wandered beyond the limits of my property, as COVID is, some of these rules have lessened up, you know, people are just so excited that there's actually something to go to, something to do, something, life is returning to normal, so to speak. That I really don't think there's any harm in waiting till September and, you know, with training and background checks and all the rest of the kind of things that would have to be done. I think, you know, we're basically at the middle of April. Be lucky to open it up maybe in a month. And then, you know, once you get into June,
yeah.
I know if I was a kid, how I'd feel about going inside. It's been inside all winter. They want to go out, you know, hopefully they want to go outside and do stuff outside.
One of the recommendations from, when we talked to Renee Williams at the school district is, she suggested, and this is back before COVID, back when we were just talking about, you know, this working ordinarily, is not to open up right at the beginning of school. You know, let that settle in for 3-4 weeks, and the same thing with the end of the year, because there's a lot of stuff going on at the end.
Yeah, they're doing exams.
Yeah, so anyways, that kind of fits into what John was saying as well, and I think it respects at least Renee's opinion, so.
And we do not have air conditioning in that portion of that building.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is some.
Will we work on trying to get staffing for the fall throughout the summer?
Yeah, my thought process was that Tom and I would start, you know, in July
Okay,
to get the word out and find out who was there and who'd like to come back and, you know, go through the process so that, you know, come September, we're pretty much ready to go.
okay.
I'm wondering if you could find some staff at the summer rec.
Right. I was thinking the
Counselors
same
at
thing.
summer rec. I mean, they'll be coming down with a few weeks off and might be able to. Yeah, obviously, I assume they like being around kids if they're working at summer rec.
A lot of those are teachers and college students.
Yeah,
Are
that is
they?
true.
But you're right, there are still some other people that will fall into that category. I know there were some employees of the school district who were interested in working there. You know, the paraprofessionals that would, you know, get out at a little after 2 and could come there, work a few hours, that type of thing. And I think also, Cindy, I don't want to, but you had a conversation with, was it Lila,
Yes,
About
well,
some
that
type
was
of-
at the meeting.
of
Something-
coordination. between-
Coordination with the library staff. She had said that they did that at other places.
Right.
So she said she had talked to some of her people about it and they were interested if the opportunity were there.
They have some great staff.
Yes, they do.
Library, so, you know, if any of those people wanted to work both places and things like that, I certainly wouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, that wasn't when, for the brief amount of time that we did open up, that wasn't an issue. I don't think getting staff. I think it was, worked out pretty well, so I anticipate it'll be the same.
I wonder well, you said there's no air conditioning in there, it probably gets pretty hot in there.
Yeah. Yeah, the summer.
What was the target age group again?
When we did it before, and I think I'd like to keep it the same, would be 6th through 10th. There was a little bit of pushback, you know, why isn't it for juniors and seniors? But honestly, I think it's important to get the sixth graders. That basically says middle school. When we initially started this project, that was what we felt was an underserved
Mhm.
portion of the community. Yeah, honestly, you get to be a junior and senior, you know, if you want to go and hang out at the youth center playing darts, you know, doesn't usually seem to be the case. And plus, you know, honestly, if I'm sending my sixth grader there, do I want them hanging out with a bunch of seniors there? Yeah, so anyways, we haven't really nailed it down again, but that's where we were, and I think it worked fine, and I think it's a good.
And we
it
can
makes
always
sense.
open it up.
Yeah, exactly, if it gets.
I
to a
think
It's a
point-
lot easier to do that than to pull
Yeah,
back.
then to pull back, once you do that, then.
Yeah,
I know I would prefer it just be open to 6th, 7th, and 8th
I
graders.
agree with that. too.
Because I think that's, you know, when Tom and I went, the school was nice enough to put this focus group together for us. And I'll tell you, I was so impressed with those kids. And one of the things, one of the kids said to me was, we have no place to go.
They
We
don't-
would like our own place where we're not worried about, you know, basically other kids deciding if what we're doing is cool or not cool. And we can just be ourselves. And that hit home with me.
yeah. And again, that was initially what we talked about. I think it was the director that had ideas of pushing it older, but yeah, I would absolutely have no problem with that as well, so,
Again, we can always expand it.
yeah.
And, you know, the building's just sitting there. I am gonna make an effort to give it a you know, a little bit of cleanup because stuff's, I've been in there, you know, I try to go in there every couple weeks. And you know, it's beginning to look a little like my cellar. Got cobwebs. So what I'm gonna get a good cleaning out of that place and just kind of make sure everything's working properly and, you know, that type of thing. Plus, if the Girl Scouts use that front portion of the building for some of their meetings, so I want the restrooms to be clean.
Yeah.
All right, so Tom, maybe you could put something together with a timeline for us for
Okay.
next month as far as, you know, advertise, interview, you know, to mid-September opening or something like that.
Okay.
See how it goes from there.
Thank you, Tom.
Next, number 17, contract with Bernard Donigan Incorporated for municipal finance.
Make the motion to contract with Bernard P. Donigan for Inc. Municipal Finance for 2022 for any municipal finance, temporary financing, permanent financing is approved by the Mendon Town Board and any disclosures required by law authorized by the town supervisor.
Second.
Any discussion? We've been working with Bernie Donigan before I came here, and they do a great job. However, not on our end, but on their end, they found out that they should have an annual contract with every municipality that they serve. So that's what led us to this agreement tonight. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye, any opposed? Thank you. Next is Library Board of Trustees. This is for an appointment.
Make a motion to appoint Mary McCabe to the position of Library Board of Trustees, appointment to expire December 31st, 2024.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Just that I think Mary is top notch.
Oh, you know her.
That's your.
I know her very well.
Good. So Mary did apply previously, and the current president of the trustees checked back with her to make sure she still had interest, and she did.
She was at the meeting as, you know, a community member the other night.
Sure. Any other discussion?
Well, I see she has experience as a treasurer also.
Yes, she does.
She's an attorney.
Mr. Colvin.
Yeah.
That's all.
Bennett, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Thank you. Next, standard workday for elected and appointed officials.
Make a motion to approve submittal of records to the New York State retirement system for all elected and appointed officials.
I'll second.
Any discussion? So anybody who is employed by the town of Mendon, who is elected to be in the New York State retirement system, who does not fill out a time card, must fill out what's known as a ROA, which is a record of activities for a 3-month period every 4 years. And this is our submittal for this year, and then that has to be posted and et cetera. For all that, I'm in the middle of my ROA, and it's just so much fun. Good time. Absolutely. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Back to public comment.
Softball.
Wait, we got-
Skip something?
When you changed.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, the softball. Yep. Dave Cochran Memorial Softball League requests for use of the softball fields on Semmel Road from May 3rd to August 23rd, 2022, from 5:45 to 8:45 PM.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Who seconded that?
Tom.
Thank you.
Public comment.
Just one quick thing. The first thing Hillary is doing is June 18th, Saturday, June 18th.
Yeah, great. Anything, Dean? Okay. We don't have anybody online, obviously, that's interested in anything I take. A motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Hello, my name is-
Wait.
Yeah.
Are they-
Mary, I need you for a minute.
Oh, that's right.
They live in that middle of the round.
I accidentally signed.
Oh.
Before I make the meeting.